Hello everyone, this is G and I'm back with another video. No camera today, I'm not quite in the mood to be on camera. There's plenty of other videos where you can see my face if you are so inclined. But I hope everyone's doing well. I just wanted to take a little time to sort of cover this. Now, how do I put this? I know I'm using Tristan's image here, but I want to be clear. This is to explain my point, and this is not in any way to shame or demean or anything like that. I just think that the image she's sharing here and what she said gives me a good jumping point to sort of what I want to say about this particular image. So while I'm probably going to disagree with Tristan on a few things, again, this is not meant in any way to be disrespectful or a dunk or anything like that. It's just me expressing my views, and they're probably going to clash a little with Tristan's, and that's okay, right? That's what I actually like about Tristan of Nerdette's Newstand. We don't always see eye to eye. We are very different, but we are always respectful toward one another. So let me get into it. So Tristan posted this about an hour ago, and she says people keep sharing this like it's some sort of gotcha on current comics. This isn't even current. It's from years of future past, from 2015. Right? She says it's from 6 years ago. And if you're on Twitter or you follow comics Twitter or the critic channels or whatnot, you've probably seen this image. It's Colossus lecturing It's old man Colossus, I should say, lecturing Kitty, and I don't know who the heck this dude in the shirt and pants is, and I don't much care. But it's this long, terribly long. I don't know if if Brian Michael Bendis wrote this, but dear God, it looks like something he would write. uh, Lecture to her. Really, let's be honest. This is really a lecture to the reader than it really is to Kitty, because Kitty, having had faced discrimination because she's a mutant, would understand that words can be hurtful at times, and that a joke isn't always just a joke. So this is more, in my opinion, a lecture at the reader than it is really uh, a sort of in-story event, right? This is less of Colossus is lecturing Kitty and more of Colossus is lecturing the reader, and they are using Kitty Pride and Blandy McBland dude over here, whoever he is, uh, to sort of stand in, right? They're sort of the audience stand in. So that's what I would say about this. Now, my first, I guess you could say, contention or disagreement would be, and my comments here, right? So Tristan knows what I think, but I figure I would use this to sort of expand on what I think. But it's this idea that it's not even current. Yeah, it's modern. Here's what I would say, right? To me, there's a difference between a current day comic and a modern comic, right? Tristan's argument seems to be here, well, this is from 6 years ago, it's not today. And fair enough. It is from 6 years ago, right? But a current day comic, in my opinion, is something that was released, say, yesterday, right? It was yesterday was comic book day, or something that was released last month, right? Or has been released this month. That is a current day comic, right? It's only a few weeks, a few days, a month or two old. That's current day, right? Same way, for example, someone says current year, right? That would be something that has happened within this year, right? The time frame is a bit tighter. Something that is modern is a bit more broad, and the time period is a bit wider, right? To me, this is not a current day comic, but it is, or I say a panel from a current day comic, but it is a panel from a modern day comic, because this is very much what we see in the modern day, right? A lot of text that says nothing, takes up a lot of space, but it says absolutely nothing. Bland art, right? Just totally bland backgrounds, So yeah, it's pretty much an example of what's been going on and what's been the standard for several years now. Something that's an example of what is currently out there that is common is a modern day comic. It's an example of what currently is popular. For example, stuff like Gotham High is a modern day comic because it's commonplace and has been for several years for YA novelists to come into the comic sphere and write a trashy, bad YA novel and try to disguise it as a comic book, right? So yes, while this may not be current day, it is certainly a modern day uh, comic. Some may say that it's a distinction without a difference, but to me, there is a difference, and one is that one was released right now. The other is an example of what is popular. It has been popular for the past several years, and this panel isn't even 10 years old. Now, if someone tried to pass a bad, wordy panel from, say, 2005 or 1995 and say, oh, this is an example of current or modern day comics, then I would say, nah, it doesn't apply. Standards and what was popular were totally different back then. But this I think still applies, right? So there's that. There's my disagreement with Tristan on this one, and more or less what I said here, right? Now let me give you an example. You know that this is still popular because there is a current day comic where this type of writing is still very commonplace, right? It's the Mother of Madness comic, right? Let me look up a panel from that for comparison's sake. I'm gonna pause it and then come back. Right, so we have this panel here from the Amelia Clark Mother of Madness comic, and you can see something very similar here, right? I covered this panel briefly in a video that I did a few weeks ago, but you can see it's very similar to the uh, Bendis penned or Bendis inspired. I think Bendis wrote this, but I would have to check and see. But by God, it looks like a Bendis thing, right? Very long, very wordy, doesn't say much. Right, the only major difference here is that there actually is this colorful, lively background. That and Amelia Clark actually predicted the Met Gala recently, especially with the help wearing the mask, while the beautiful elites get to, party hard and all that stuff, and talk about tax the rich while their dressmaker owes a lot in debt. But that's a story for another day. But you can see here that it definitely, right, this modern day comic, right, certainly was an influence on this current day comic. Right, so to me, there's there's sort of the difference, right? This led to that. This gave birth to this, right? So there's sort of my viewpoint or expanded viewpoint, perhaps, on that issue, the difference between a modern day comic and the difference between a current day comic. Now, the second thing that I wanted to sort of address, right? Let me see here. Wait a second. Come on, come on, come up. So, what I wanted to address specifically about this is just the way it was written and what I think could have done better, right? Well, here's the first issue. This looks in, first of all, the background's just bland as hell. Just white, nothing there. But This is just looks incredibly cluttered. This is not a good way to have this long-winded conversation. I look at this and it's like the visual representation of when you're sitting in a meeting or you're sitting in class and someone's just droning on and on and on and on, and your mind is just wandering off and you're just trying to look like you're interested and that you understand what they're saying. In my opinion, Brian Michael Bendis is pretty much everything people complained about when it came to Chris Claremont's writing, but he doesn't have Chris Claremont's talent. The thing about Claremont is that he took novel style writing, which is lengthy by design because you have to be very descriptive, and he made it work in a comic format. Brian Michael Bendis is not Chris Claremont. Chris could take several pages and several panels and actually have a deep, thought provoking conversation and actually say something. This is just word vomit, right? So there's that. And two, this layout, in my opinion, is just terrible. What there should have been, as I was saying, is several pages, maybe three at most, I would say, pages where there's a three-panel layout, right? And we can see the actual expressions on Kitty's face and Colossus' face and this dude in the black T-shirt, right? And see how they're actually receiving, how they're understanding what Colossus is saying, right? Is Kitty horrified? Is she angered? Is she confused? We don't know. Same with this guy, right? He looks a little suspicious, but that's about it, right? And we don't know what Colossus' expression is because we're looking at him and it's in profile, right? So we're just seeing the side of his face, right? So I think it would have helped had they broken this up across like 3 pages and had again the panel of each person's face, and we get to see their actual visual uh, uh, response and reaction to what Colossus is saying. And lastly, I would say that what would have helped is if there was some actual interaction in this conversation. The thing about this is that a conversation is, especially when you're writing for a comic book, right? A conversation is very much like a fight, right? Or a competition, you could say. Meaning that nobody wants to watch a fight where nothing happens. Nobody wants to watch a fight or watch a competition where there's no interaction, right? Where the opposing forces don't actually collide, right? And just like nobody wants to watch a fight where there's no fighting, nobody wants to read a conversation where there's no talking, where there's no interaction. What does Kitty think about what Colossus is saying? We don't even get thought bubbles here. Does she think that he's overreacting? Does she feel ashamed of the joke that she told? Is she offended? Right? How does she feel? How does this dude in the black shirt feel? What are Kurt's thoughts on this? Right? There's no interaction here. She isn't saying, "Hey, it was just a joke. I didn't mean anything by it," or the other guy, isn't saying anything. He's not interjecting like, "Hey, leave her alone. You weren't there," or anything like that. It's literally just Colossus talking. Scroll. And talking. And talking. And saying absolutely nothing of note. Right? Saying absolutely nothing worthwhile. It's just a long, boring lecture that is truly intended to the reader, not the characters that we see on the panel. And again, as we've seen several times over the years, this is what modern day comics like to do. They like to use the story to lecture the reader, to lecture the reader about their personal viewpoints or their politics or their social views or anything like that. They try to tell you what to think instead of telling you how to think. Comics no longer present a position for you to chew on. They now tell you you will think like this or else you are a social ill. And that is one of many, many, many problems that comics has because here's the thing. Right, Tristan says this image is from what I've heard, it's not just Tristan, but from what I heard, this is from 2015 during the Secret Wars comic. And things have not improved, right? It's not like Mother of Madness has been getting good reviews. It hasn't. Although, to be fair, this is an independent comic, right? But again, it's not as if modern comics has rebounded, right? It's not as if the art's improved or the writing's improved across the board or anything. If anything, there has been a steep decline. And keep in mind, if this is indeed from 2015, that means this is even pre-Comicsgate, right? So this is pre-Comicsgate. Comicsgate wouldn't happen until about 2016, 2017, I think, because of the whole milkshake thing. That was sort of what kicked it off, and Heather Antos having a freak out. So this even predates that, and yet years later, right? This is 2015. There's a interview clip floating around that many of the Comicsgate people or similar people who make similar content, let's say, not everybody is Comicsgate, but a lot of people make similar content. Right? There's been this interview clip from 2019 of Kelly Sue DeConnick talking about how sales at that time, had tanked. And again, 2019, that's pre-COVID. And yet she was talking about how comic sales had tanked. That even in the indie scene, many comics weren't making their money back. Right, they weren't making back the cost of making floppies. There were only a few comic books at that time that were doing really, really good sales wise. And she said that numbers that used to get you canceled, right, in years past, were now considered a hit, right? And that was 2019. That was just before COVID, right? And because of COVID and the shutdowns and restrictions, things have only gotten worse. The thing is that the hard copy of a comic, right? No matter what you do, is going to die out, right? Print media in general is dying out because the internet just makes it obsolete in most instances. But the bigger problem, other than the changes in distribution model or business model, come in the fact that if your product is not good, if your product has bad dialogue, right, or just is again lecturing, if the art's not good, if it's not engaging in some fashion, if it's not something people want to read, then it doesn't matter how you distribute it to them. It's not going to go anywhere. You could offer a comic reader Secret Wars for a free, and I don't think many of them would take it. Maybe some of the collectors would, but I don't think many people, even if you gave them a free copy of Secret Wars, would take it. Or if you gave them a free copy of, come on, Mother of Madness, right, would take it. And that's the point, and that's the problem, right? The modern day comic industry, or the current day comic industry, whatever you want to call it, in my opinion, needs to address the pink elephant in the room. If your base product, if the thing you sell is not good, then it doesn't matter how you sell it. It doesn't matter whether you sell it direct market. It doesn't matter if you sell it through a publisher. It doesn't matter if you give it away. It doesn't matter if you download it or you print a physical copy. If the product you are selling is bad, people will not purchase it. They won't even take it from you for free because then they would have spent time and they don't want to lose that either. Right? So, in my opinion, before anything else can be addressed about modern day comics and the distribution model and the death of stores and all this other stuff, which are things that are certainly of concern, to be clear. But before I think you can address any of that, you have to address what you're actually selling. Because guess what? Trying to sell this has not worked. Sales have dropped. Trying to sell this has not worked. Sales have dropped. They may want to look back not at the modern day, but at the I don't know if it's the golden age, right? But they may want to look back at the past of the 80s and maybe even some points in the 90s, right, where storytelling was much more of a higher and more important concern. This is not to say that social issues could not be addressed. Many social issues were addressed in comics from the 80s and the 90s and even going back to the 70s and 60s. But I think they need to go back to that. And I'm not saying they necessarily need to bring that style back, but I do think they need to learn the lessons, right? Because it was in what? It was in 1991, I think it was, when it was X-Men 1, I believe it is. It was the one where Chris Claremont did the writing and Jim Lee did the art. And I think this was supposed to be Claremont's last comic on X-Men because he wrote it from like 1975 to like 1990, 1991. Right? That's one of the highest selling comics of all time, right? Over millions and millions of copies. That should be what modern day comics should be looking at and trying to get back to. There was a point where Marvel could joke in their other comics like She-Hulk about how much even a standard, sort of run of the mill X-Men comic could sell hundreds of thousands of copies without trying. I don't think X-Men has sold that well in a real long time, well beyond a decade. That's what Marvel should be aiming for. They should be looking back at their past, at their successes, and learning the lessons from those, and then applying it to their current day or modern day work. Right? They should be modeling success, but instead, all they do is continue to try to appeal to that very niche Twitter reactive audience who, as many people have stated, who don't read the comics, who don't buy the comics, who don't actually engage in comic culture. They just complain about everything that they perceive to be wrong with comics from the past and how those sins of the past cannot be repeated in the modern day. Instead of listening to their passionate long-term audience, Marvel and DC and many other companies have listened to these niche people, and they talk about how they're making comics for the modern day, or they're updating certain characters, or removing mantles, or doing things like making Tim Drake bisexual for absolutely no reason, for modern day sensibilities. If the people who advocate for modern day sensibilities are not buying the comic, then maybe you should stop writing for them, Marvel, DC, and other mainstream people. But, it's just one grumpy woman's opinion. But anyway, that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all on the next one. And again, this was by no means meant to shame Tristan or anything. Just a respectful disagreement. So if you see this, Tristan, hi! But anyway, that's the video, and hope to see you all around. Bye.